Okay, today class in Ag Science, since it's raining outside, we're going to pull this thing indoors, if it's okay with you guys. So today, we're going to kind of continue our beef cattle discussion. Yesterday we talked just a little bit, if you watched that video. If not, I encourage you to go back and watch it. But if you have, we looked just real fast at what was a cow, what was a bull. We looked at a steer and we looked at a heifer. And so today, since it's raining outside and decided to look at some key management components, definitely this table in our shop today doesn't represent everything that you would use in beef cattle production, but just some things to look at. Some of these things that these beef cattle producers have to purchase. Some of these things are expensive, some of them are relatively cheap, but in the grand scheme of things, some things that are represented here are some must-haves if you're going to raise beef cattle at home. One of the first things that I want to show you today is this beef cattle prod, otherwise known as a sorting stick. Now, something I want to make note for you guys today about sorting beef cattle is the number one rule to handling livestock, and that is if you're going to handle beef cattle, handle them with the least amount of pressure necessary. So the very first thing I'm going to do if I'm getting out in the field with some is leave this bad boy in the truck. I'm going to go out, I'm going to approach them with a calm demeanor. I'm not going to be loud, and I'm going to try to stay routine. If I start hooping and hollering as soon as I pull up, they're going to know something's up, and they're probably not going to react well. Now, if I get in close quarters and I'm having to give some mild encouragement, then having a stick is going to be good. And I like to use a stick just like this. This one was given to me by Performance Feeds, and it works really well. Doesn't make a lot of noise, pretty easy to tuck, get into tight corners, and also, again, to give some mild persuasion. I'm not going to sit here and beat on a cow. I'm going to sit here, I'm going to try to give her just enough encouragement to do what I need her to do. And we'll talk in future lessons about flight zones and how cattle react to pressure in order to make sure that we can move them properly. But let's move on for just a second. Yesterday, I asked you a question about steers and why we steer a bull calf. So today, I want to show you one of those tools, and maybe in a future episode demonstrate how to use this. But this is what's known quite honestly as a bander. This is just one model. They make different versions of this. But you take this little band, this little rubber band, you'll put it on this bander, and once you get it on that bander, then you would open up that bander, put it over the scrotum, and that goes into our discussion about maintaining certain genetics in our herd, as far as keeping certain bulls from breeding, letting them grow up and get reproductively mature. So that's one of those discussions that we can have. But also from a production standpoint, this is going to be a game changer when it comes to that calf putting on weight, putting on fat, and putting on muscle, which really is the name of the game. So if we continue around, another thing that we want to do is we want to identify our cattle. You know, if you're like me and yesterday you're sitting at home and you get a phone call, somebody says, I think you've got a cow out. Well, obviously from our discussion, that would lead you to believe that it was a mature female that was out. But saying that you got your cattle out lets you know, hey, I've got to get up, I've got to go out, I've got to figure out what's going on. So what we like to do is we like to identify our cows or our cattle, whether it be a bull, whether it be a heifer calf, whether it be a bull calf or a steer. This was a representation of a cow or bull tag, an adult, somebody we're keeping around. This number's already on here, it's given, it's printed. We're going to identify that cow, and she's going to hopefully keep this tag for a lifetime. This would be an example of a clear tag that we have written on. We've put our brand up at the top. We've put the calf's number and a lot of times we'll put another number out to the side, but much smaller. Now that smaller number could represent the month of the year in which that calf was born. This is going to help us with some management practices down the road. But to use this, you simply will unlock it. You'll put the tag in the tagger. You'll put the back on this side, put it up on the ear. You'll find 2 veins to go between in the middle of the ear, and then you'll basically just pierce their ear, causing very little pain, but an awesome way to identify animals in your herd and keep up with those records. Now, what happens if I sell that cow? Or what happens if that calf loses part of its tag? Then I enters this bad boy. This is going to reach in behind the ear and cut this back part of this tag, allowing me to either re-tag them or place a different number on them. Let's say we have a calf that comes up sick. Enter the bolus injector. Now, this is going to be a pill giver for your calf. It's not like you or your little brother or your little sister or your cousin taking some Flintstone vitamins. They're not just going to chew them up just because they like them. These jokers are, hey, I've got the scours, I've got diarrhea, I've got something going on internally, and I need some medicine. We simply will take a pill, whatever the dosage is recommended on the bottle, and make sure that you read those dosage recommendations, and then we're going to stick this down, partially down the throat of the calf, and simply inject it into their throat, kind of forcing them to swallow it. May seem a little rough, but you're not talking about a kid. You're talking about an animal that is weighing anywhere from 100 to 400 pounds and maybe up. And we're going to enter into the situation where, hey, we've got problems with gaining weight because maybe we have a worm problem. This is an example of a worming medicine gun, or as I would say, or an applicator. On the side, you'll see that you have different cc's or milliliters. All of those are matched up to a weight range, so you know the proper dosage of what to put on your animal. Now, I feel like I need to throw this in here at this time because there's a lot of discussion out there about what medicines are animals given on the farm before they go to slaughter and before I get them at the grocery store. So let me be the first to tell you, if you haven't already heard this, the very, very least amount of medicine that we can give to animals is what we'll give them. Because if we give them too much, then guess what? We're not being very good stewards, and actually we can make them sick. So we're not going to give them anything that we do not feel like they have to have. And that's one area where your beef cattle producers have to be educated. They have to know what's necessary and what's not necessary for that calf to be raised up to the point that it needs to be healthy and safe for you to eat. So medicine, no medicine, it all depends on the animal. And there's a lot of difference between vaccinating an animal with antibiotics because they're sick and giving them something that prevents something as well. So we'll talk about that later in another episode. Just some examples of syringes that you would give to your cattle, using your cattle. Here we have a LA300, very common medicine used in beef cattle. And here we've got some pink eye medicine. And that kind of leads us on to another discussion, because back when we started this thing last week, we talked about how, you know, hey, it's getting spring, it's going to be summer, there's going to be flies out, and we're going to have some pink eye problems pop up, especially if you remembered in our white-faced cattle. And they tend to be the most prone. So just some examples. Give them this ahead of time, and this is probably going to knock out most all of your problems with pink eye. But what happens if I do come up with a case of pink eye in my herd? Well, then there's medicines to put in that eye to actually help to heal that eye. But one thing we want to do is remove the spread of it and keep it clean. Now you and I, if we've got to keep something clean, we can wrap it, we can rewrap it multiple times a day if we have to. But we're talking about an animal that's out in nature, running around in the pasture, climbing off in the pond, going through some brush. So this is a really cool deal for a shut eye brand patch that you can actually use this glue or cement to put this over the animal's eye, and it'll stay there for several days. That allows the animal time to let it heal, lets it time to rest, relax, and also some time for other medicines to take effect in order to keep it from getting worse. And if we're really honest, one of the biggest perks of having this is to keep flies from getting on here, on the eye rather, that's under this, and taking it to another cow or calf that's likely to get infected. So then, what if I've got a calf that's nice? What if she's got the balance, the eye appeal, the volume? She looks like a miniature version of a cow. And I want to hit the show ring with her. Well, there's a few things that we can do. We're going to brush her. We're going to clean her out. This is just an example of a brush, but we've got combs that you can use. But we also are going to have to invest in a halter. Now, this is a rope halter and one that's very common to use in beef cattle and even in dairy cattle. Definitely not necessarily the show quality type halter that we're going to use. But hey, if I'm in the backyard, I want a good SAE or 4-H project to halter break this calf and show it, then this is where I'm going to start. Again, these are just some of the just bare essentials, not all of them. Definitely there's more, but just some things to get your mind rolling today on this wet, soggy Tuesday and help you remember that, hey, there's a lot behind my meat getting on my plate at that restaurant. And we'll see you tomorrow.